Good morning, everybody. You're very welcome to Monday's junior cycle geography lesson. So, following on from our last class, guys, our last live lesson, we looked at Renaissance architecture. Okay, and think back, guys, a bit of a recap. Okay, think back. What were some of the features of Renaissance architecture that we still use to this day? So, we have buildings have large pillars in front of them. For example, the GPO and the White House. Some buildings have massive domes. Okay, so for example, the forecourts in Ireland, they've got these massive domes. And think back, what was that called? What was that technique called to build a dome? It was called corbelling. Okay, remember when you literally put each as you go up, each layer of blocks is slightly in, so both the layers on either side are getting gradually closer and closer together, and that was corbelling. Okay, you had a portico as well. A portico. What was a portico? That was the large porch area out in front of a building. Okay, and the Renaissance style architecture very much influences a lot of architecture today in the 21st century. Okay, so today what we're doing is we're going on to Renaissance art. Okay, so there was a big difference between medieval art and Renaissance art. Okay, so first of all, what do we know about art so far during the Renaissance? Well, we know that artists in the Middle Ages didn't really get paid. Okay, so in the Middle Ages, artists didn't get paid, whereas in the Renaissance they did. Why did they get paid during the Renaissance? Well, this was because people began to take an interest in art. Okay, art just wasn't seen as very fashionable in the Middle Ages, and people began to get interested in art during the Renaissance. Okay, and who particularly had an interest in art? What are these people called? Patrons. So a patron, a wealthy person that wanted to, I suppose, spend money on art. They wanted to have their home decorated with art. They wanted to have their home designed in a really nice way. So these patrons were wealthy people who had an interest in architecture and art, and they were willing to pay architects and artists to, do pieces of work for them. Okay, and it's a bit like anything, guys. If, for example, if you play a musical instrument or you play a sport, that's obviously a hobby for you. Okay, but if I turned around and said, look, I'm going to pay you €50,000 a year for you to play that or to do that full time, but it means I want you to practice for 3 hours every day of the week. Okay, because you're practicing more and you're getting paid for it, you're going to improve. Okay, and that's a big reason why art improved in the Renaissance, because there was way more artists who are now getting paid, and they were willing to put in more work and experiment with new techniques in painting. Okay, so first of all, guys, before we start, in front of you, you have this is an example of a medieval style painting. Okay, so medieval painting was not very realistic looking. Okay, it was not very lifelike. All right, so if you look at this picture here, you can see you've got a woman and she's carrying a child. Okay, now the child to me just looks like a small man, a really small man. Doesn't look very lifelike. There's no real uh, they weren't very good at using expression. Okay, so they weren't very good at making people look happy or sad. Okay, there's no background to the painting either. There's no background. This child and woman just need to be standing in front of a wall. Okay, if you look at her hands look very unrealistic. They do not look lifelike. Okay, there is no shading. Okay, and there's just not a lot of detail in it. Okay, so medieval art, so medieval painting. In a medieval painting, what they actually used to do is important people such as kings or queens or maybe Jesus. These were actually painted way larger than less important people. Okay, so an important person, a picture of an important person like a king, would be painted like to be taller than all the other people. Okay, even though they might have been very small, but they just painted them tall anyway to show their importance. So if you look at a medieval photo, the tallest person in a medieval not a photo, sorry, a painting, the tallest person in a medieval painting is the most important person in that painting. Okay, um there was a lack of feeling in facial expression. So facial expressions were kind of vacant. They didn't really show much. Okay, so everyone did a blank facial expression. There was no emotion shown. Okay, and this was because artists were not, literally in the Middle Ages, artists were not talented enough to show this. They were not good enough painters to show if someone was happy or sad or excited or scared. Okay, so there was a lack of feeling in facial expressions in the medieval painting. Okay, paintings look flat and lacked background. So paintings, they had no like 3D effect to them. Okay, you couldn't really the background like you couldn't see like if you're painting now and you want to show something in the background, you would paint it smaller to show that it's in the background. Whereas in the Middle Ages, artists could not do this. They simply did not understand this and could not wrap their head around doing this, and they didn't have the skill to do it either. Okay, artists. Another thing as well is artists used egg yolk to make the paint stick. Okay, so they cracked eggs to make paint. Now the problem with this is when you paint using egg yolk, okay, the paint dries extremely quickly. Okay, so the paint dries within a matter of seconds. So this means that it's difficult to add detail and it's also difficult to correct mistakes. Okay, so that was a big thing. The paint was poor quality. Okay, and it dried very quickly, so it was difficult to add detail and to I suppose correct any mistakes you make. Okay, so that's medieval painting there in a nutshell. All right. Now we're going to jump into how this evolved or how it changed during the Renaissance. How did painting improve during the Renaissance? Okay, in front of you there, guys, that's another example of a medieval painting. It's fellas out on a boat and they can see a sea monster of some sort. Okay, and again, look at it. Like, look, it does not look lifelike at all. And you might think, oh, sure, they're probably only just trying to paint, like unrealistically on purpose. They're not. This is actually, in the Middle Ages, this is an artist's, doing their very best to make this look like a real picture. Okay, so you can see it looks like it's not realistic at all. Okay, you can't see any kind of perspective. What's near, what's beside you, what's far away from you. It just looks like a flat drawing that you might do yourself. Okay, so it's very it's not realistic at all. Okay, so now we're going to go on to Renaissance art. Okay, and straight away, guys, you can see here we have a picture of from the Renaissance era, and it's similar to this picture on this slide. Okay, so this picture is of a woman carrying a child. Okay, it's probably actually Mary, Joseph, and Jesus. Actually, that's probably what it is. But you can see straight away, guys, the sheer detail in the picture. Okay, you can see how they look extremely lifelike. All right, you can see, guys, look in the background. You can see mountains here. You can see buildings. You can see in the background here. You can see a river and mountains as well, and they look realistic. They're painted smaller in the background. Okay, it looks like a 3D image. It looks very 3D. It doesn't look flat at all. Okay, so Renaissance painting. So in the Renaissance, paintings looked more real. And you can see that here, guys. This looks extremely real if you compare it to this one, So there was huge developments. Okay, artists became supremely talented. A big one, guys, was the type of paint they used. So remember, in the Middle Ages, they used egg yolk. What was the problem with egg yolk? Well, egg yolk dried extremely quickly. And what this meant was artists, if they could not add great detail to their paintings, nor could they correct any mistakes. Okay, linseed oil was better because linseed oil, it dried a lot slower. So it meant artists had time to add lots of detail into their paintings and also to correct any mistakes. Okay, so linseed oil dried slowly, and this allowed the artist to correct any mistakes. Okay, and this was a big development in Renaissance painting. Okay, so you can see here, guys, this picture here, like, it's fantastic painting, and the detail in it is just absolutely incredible. Okay, it looks like a photograph, really. All right, so as well as new paint in the Renaissance, linseed oil, there is also a number of new Renaissance painting techniques. I'm going to look at them now. Okay, so think back to the first couple of images I showed you from the Middle Ages. The paintings look flat. Okay, they did not look 3D. Okay, in the Renaissance, artists developed a new method for showing paintings to show. It's called perspective, basically to show things in the background and to make them look like smaller to the scale that they would be if you were looking at them in real life. And this is called perspective. Okay, so this was a technique used to show space and distance in a picture. And this is a great example of a picture here. Okay, so look at this. This is from the Renaissance era. Look, you can see the archways. The archways get gradually smaller and smaller and smaller. Why is that the case? Well, obviously, because those archways are back in the background. Okay, the same as the people. The people in the front of the picture are a little bit bigger than the people here towards the back of the picture. Okay, and that's called showing perspective. And it's so simple. All artists were doing was painting people and features in the background smaller, okay, to make them look more realistic and give this kind of 3D effect. All right, and that's showing perspective. So objects near the front of the picture are painted larger than those at the back. Okay, so again, you can see, imagine you're standing here, right? You're standing under this archway. You can see the archway above you, okay, and then just maybe 30 meters away, you can see this archway. 60 meters away, you can see this archway. Maybe 90 or 100 meters away, you see this archway here. Okay, so it's just a way of showing distance in a picture, and it was actually, when you think about it, it's extremely simple. Okay, but obviously, guys, this is a huge development at the time, and it obviously took a lot of talent to be able to do this. Okay, so that's showing perspective. All right, our second Renaissance painting technique. Okay, and it was used on this painting here. So a lot of you probably know what this painting is. This is of the Mona Lisa. Okay, very, very famous painting. Some of you may have seen this. It's on display at the Louvre Museum in Paris. Okay, it's actually, when you go to see it, it's really interesting because it's actually like really small, and if you walk by it, you probably wouldn't think much of it. Okay, but it's such a famous painting because I suppose we don't know who this woman is. We don't know what her expression is like. Her eyes follow you around the room as well. Okay, so it's a very, very famous and interesting painting, and it's got incredible detail as well. Okay, and a big technique used in painting the Mona Lisa was called fumato. Okay, so say that to yourself, fumato. Okay, now the S is silent, so fumato, and this means smoky. Okay, and basically what fumato was adding shading to a painting just to make it more realistic. Okay, so the Mona Lisa was very, very famous for its use of fumato. So particularly here, if you look here underneath her chin, you can see, okay, that's incredible detail. Like that again looks like a photograph, okay, but it's not. It's obviously a painting, and that's where shading has been used here, okay, to really show the detail between her neck and her chin. Then again, guys, around, you look here, look at all the small little details in the gown that she is wearing. Look at the kind of shading used to show the little kind of grooves in her gown, and down around here as well. So there's incredible shading used in this photo, okay, or sorry, this painting. So fumato, this is when shading is used to make pictures look more lifelike. Okay, this was used on the Mona Lisa. So the Mona Lisa, a great example of a painting where fumato was used. Okay, so again, shading. All right, shading. The use of shading to make things look more lifelike. Again, look, see this is to her left now, to our right, to her left. You can see there's shading used on this side of her hair. It's kind of difficult to see, whereas this side is clearer. Okay, so again, the artists are able to see what the light is like in a room and apply this to their painting. So again, incredibly talented artists. Okay, now we have a picture in front of us, okay, of the Sistine Chapel. Okay, so the Sistine Chapel is an incredible piece of artwork. Okay, and if you look there, guys, you can see, okay, it really doesn't, you have to go and see it. It does not do it justice. Okay, just looking at it on a picture, it's absolutely massive. It's on a huge, huge scale. Okay, and the Sistine Chapel is an example of a fresco. Okay, and a fresco is essentially a painting that has been painted onto a wall. Okay, and a painting. So yeah, Renaissance artists often painted on walls or ceilings. Okay, and again, it was a form of decoration. Okay, so artists often, sorry, yeah, they painted these onto walls or ceilings. So this was painted by Michelangelo. Okay, again, Michelangelo, we heard of him. He's also a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. But Michelangelo was the artist who painted this, and it took him years upon years upon years to do. Okay, what he actually did is he actually lost his eyesight, got very badly damaged because he used to lie. He'd build scaffolding and he'd lie flat on his back painting the ceiling, and every time a bit of paint dripped in his eye, it was very bad for his eyesight, and he got so much paint in his eye that he actually began to go blind. Okay, and that was because he was painting the Sistine Chapel. Okay, this is the Sistine Chapel in Rome. All right, so that's an example of a fresco, art painted onto a wall or ceiling. Another interesting thing about frescoes, guys, is like because you're painting onto a wall in someone's home, you cannot, under any circumstances, make a major mistake. Okay, so what artists used to do is before they painted onto the wall or ceiling, they actually sketched their painting. So Michelangelo would have sketched this onto a piece of paper. Okay, and this was called a cartoon. And this, guys, is where modern day cartoons come from. So again, cartoon, like, think of comic books. Okay, comic books, if anyone's ever read comic books, okay, you can see that there's cartoon sketch, they're all sketched out by an artist. Okay, and that the idea of sketching a scene like this onto a piece of paper came from the Renaissance. Okay, so it came from the likes of Michelangelo. He knew, okay, the Sistine Chapel, I cannot under any circumstances damage this or ruin this, so I have to make sure it's done properly. So he would have done a cartoon sketch before he went about painting the Sistine Chapel. Okay, so that's an interesting fact for you there. Okay, guys, so your assignment or homework, okay, not too long. Okay, so in front of you, you got two paintings. You've got one from the Renaissance and one from the Middle Ages. Okay, I think it's very obvious in front of you now which one is from the Middle Ages and which one's from the Renaissance. I want you to have a look at both paintings and write down four differences between the Renaissance painting and the medieval painting and submit it to schoolwise. Okay, so again, write down four differences. So take into account what you know about medieval art, what you know about Renaissance art, the techniques, what techniques are used in this painting, what techniques aren't used here. Okay, and write down four differences between both paintings. Okay, I'll give you a clue. Obviously, the one on the left here is obviously the medieval one. The one on the right is obviously the Renaissance one. Okay, so guys, thanks very much. Remember, tomorrow, Tuesday morning, we have tutorial. Okay, and then our next live history lesson will be on Thursday. Okay, so look forward to chatting to you then. Okay, thanks for tuning in, guys, and take care.